After the past 2 years, due to the overall COVID disruptions, we've clearly seen a fillip to the digitalization in the financial services in the fintech industry. That momentum continued for this year. Clearly, I think it's a question of how much more growth and how much adoption, where you would see customers and organizations adopting to digital way of doing things. If you were to kind of look at now for 2023, I see a few trends and few areas I believe will propel the momentum of the overall financial services in the fintech industry. The first one I believe is what's now called the embedded fintech story. With a lot of these new age digital first organizations, they're kind of looking at embedding the overall banking and payment flows into their workflows so as to ensure a better seamless customer experience and a user experience. What it really means is the growth of API first, platform based thinking, and anybody who wants to play in this industry has to focus on what I call cloud native, API first, and providing for platform and not products, so that different user flows could easily be embedded by these companies. The second one, I believe the whole story of India is about digital payments. And India clearly is a leader in the volumes of digital payments in the world, and that too by a fairly big margin, with a growth rate of around 50% every year. And if you have to look at UPI, it's like we've been growing 160% year on year. Clearly, that momentum is something that I kind of expect as we move forward. This year, in November 2022, we've seen transactions a little over 8 billion with both UPI and IMPS. We're talking $150 billion of money flow going through the system. My prediction is if I were to look at 23, probably will easily cross $2 trillion of money processing across UPI and IMPS combined. The third area, which I believe is very important, is the government and the regulator push. The regulator is looking at, if you look at DBUs, the digital banking units, which have been set up across 75 districts. What RBI and the government are really doing is to facilitate the mass set of people who've really not had access to computers, etc., give them a way of managing things through digital means and self-service. So that's going to be interesting, and hopefully we'll see a big transition and shift there. Second one, of course, is the overall e-rupee thought process, the CBDC. And I believe that's an interesting development as far as the RBI is concerned. If I may digress a bit here, the overall cryptocurrency, I think, is going to be in the realms of speculation and a commodity. The overall growth of blockchain-based crypto is going to be through CBDC, the e-rupee thought process. And while it's going to have its own adoption curve, I'm fairly confident that we're going to see in the next 2 to 3 years a significant use, especially in the retail sector, the use of the e-rupee as a means of transacting. Coming back to the regulatory thought process, the other one which I expect to cause a good positive disruption is the account aggregator guidelines. We're going to see a lot of focus, especially on the SME side, where the lending capabilities would be enhanced with better credit decisioning. That's the other one I'm kind of looking at. And the fourth and the final one, which I believe is hopefully going to make a difference, is the focus on the digital banks or digital banking guidelines. And that's where I would let me now segue into the last area where I believe we're going to see some action, is the overall growth of neobanks and the neobanking platforms. There's been a bit of a lull, especially in the SME and the business side, but while we've seen the consumer area, there's a lot of focus and banking platforms trying to get better user experience and customer experience. But with the new guidelines coming in, hopefully we'll see a big disruption there. INC 42 claims that we're talking about it being a $48 billion market and probably going all the way to $180 billion in the next 5-10 years. So that's going to be interesting. And if I were to look at the SME and the business banking side, I believe that I think is going to be even more interesting, because we're really talking about these banks focusing on the overall requirements of the entities, not just providing them for banking and payments, but also the other aspects like invoicing, helping them manage their stuff like HR payroll processing. So a combination of all of them I think will really disrupt the business banking side of the business, and that's something that I'm hoping a lot of new startups are going to take advantage of. With all what we're seeing here, one area of concern is cyber security. Hackers are having a field day. Every day we're seeing where new vulnerabilities are being exposed. So the focus on security is of prime importance, as well as both banks and the fintechs are concerned. And here and where I think there's a huge opportunity for organizations focused on security. But the other aspect, I believe we're going to see some interesting movement, is how do you bring in the awareness and educate and make customers aware of these threats. And that's where a lot of gamification is going to kind of come to the fore. And with that, I think hopefully customers would be made aware of vulnerabilities and threats, and hopefully they'll get that much more careful. And I think that's going to be something to watch out for. Finally, in terms of what people keep talking about, the new normal, I believe hopefully apart from the scare that we are hearing of again across the world in terms of COVID, I hope it's just going to be a normal and not really talking about anything called new normal. But the only new normal I would expect is that a significant portion is actually going to be digitalized, and the financial services and the fintech industry is going to come out with better business models to serve for customers.